There's a question that comes up all the time, and it causes a ton of confusion. Can the number you use to pay your taxes, an ITIN, eventually turn into a social security number? I mean, it seems like it should, right? But the answer, well, it might surprise you. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's just put the main question right out there, front and center. Can having an ITIN, an individual taxpayer identification number, lead to getting a social security number? Is it a pathway? A first step on a longer journey? And the answer, in no uncertain terms, is no. It's a hard no. An ITIN is not and was never designed to be a stepping stone to a social security number. They are two completely different things. And in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why their paths never ever cross.
So here's how we're going to do this. First, we'll tackle that common question and officially bust the myth. Then we'll get into what an ITIN actually is and compare it directly to an SSN. After that, we'll look at the surprising financial power an ITIN can give you, and of course, what happens if your immigration status changes down the line. Finally, we'll wrap it all up with the bottom line. All right, first things first, let's just bust this myth wide open. The idea that an ITIN is some kind of temporary number that magically converts into an SSN is probably one of the biggest misconceptions out there. They are fundamentally different tools, built for different people for entirely different reasons.
So, to really get why these two numbers don't connect, we have to go back to the very beginning. What exactly is an ITIN? Well, its whole reason for being is built around one single idea: tax compliance. The IRS itself gives us the clearest definition, but the really important part, the key phrase, is right there at the end: not eligible to obtain a social security number. See, this isn't a pre SSN, it's an alternative for people who can't get one. It's all about making sure that everyone who earns money in the US can follow the law and pay their taxes.
And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. The proof is right in the paperwork. To even get an ITIN, you have to submit this form, the W-7, along with a valid federal income tax return. You can't have one without the other. This just hammers home its core purpose. You get an ITIN because you have to file taxes. Period. All right, so we've established that an ITIN is a tax tool. Now let's put it side by side with an SSN. This is where it all becomes crystal clear. Think of them as two parallel tracks on a railway. They run alongside each other, but they are never going to merge. This chart just lays it all out. An ITIN, it's only for tax reporting. An SSN, that's for tracking your earnings for Social Security benefits later on. Eligibility is different too. And here's the absolute biggest difference. An ITIN does not authorize you to work in the US. An SSN does. They serve completely separate functions in our system.
And if you need it said any clearer, just check out this quote from the National Immigration Law Center. It's not a work permit. It doesn't get you Social Security checks, and it has zero impact on your immigration status. It is purely and only a tax processing number.
So, okay, if an ITIN isn't a backdoor to an SSN, you might be thinking, well, what's the big deal then? But it turns out it's a huge deal. Because besides taxes, an ITIN is an absolutely critical key that can unlock the entire US financial system. First and foremost, yes, its main job is filing taxes. But think about what that really means. It's not just about following the rules. It's about creating an official financial footprint. It lets people formally report their income, pay what they owe, and build a history of contributing to the US tax system. And this one is so important. An ITN is often your ticket to opening a bank account. Just think about that for a second. That means you can move away from a risky cash-only life. It lets people safely store their money, build up savings, and use the basic financial tools that so many of us take for granted. It's a huge step towards stability. And then there's this, which is maybe the most powerful part. An ITIN can be used to start building a credit history. And you know how it is in the US. Your credit score is basically everything. You need it to rent an apartment, get a car, sometimes even for a job. Without it, you're pretty much financially invisible. An ITIN is what helps you become visible. And listen, we're not just talking about theory here. We are talking about real, tangible access to credit. Tons of financial institutions, especially credit unions, now have lending programs specifically for people with ITINs. This unlocks things like car loans to get to work, credit cards to build that crucial credit history, and personal loans for emergencies. It's a financial lifeline. Okay, but what about the big what if? What if someone's situation changes? What if a person who has an ITN later becomes eligible for and actually gets a social security number? Does it all become a big complicated mess? Well, actually, the official process is surprisingly simple. The moment you get that social security number, the IRS is very clear. You stop using your ITIN immediately. From that day on, you use your new SSN for all your tax filings, and you don't even have to formally cancel the ITIN. The best part? The IRS will then link your old tax records from your ITIN to your new SSN account, so your entire tax history stays together. All right, let's land the plane here. After everything we've talked about, what's the real bottom line? What is the true role of an ITIN in the US today? First, let's just appreciate the sheer scale of this. As of late 2022, there were over 5.8 million active ITINs being used. This isn't some small niche program. It is a significant, vital part of our tax and financial system, impacting millions of lives and helping contribute billions to the economy. And this brings us right back to where we started. If there's one thing you take away from this, it's this. An ITIN is a parallel tool. It runs alongside the SSN system, but it's separate. It was created for people who can't get an SSN to let them pay taxes and get access to financial tools. It was never meant to be a bridge. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. We've established that an ITIN isn't a path to a social security number. But has it become something else, something just as important? Has it become the primary key for millions of people to unlock a real financial identity and a foothold in the American economy? It's a question that really gets to the heart of what financial inclusion is all about.